All right, it's pumping data. I'll assume that's working. I may need to borrow this for just a second.
You can just.
Oh yeah, there's us there. So we'll go live there. So we're on Facebook tonight. Excellent. And now we want this to be a little quieter. So if we do get someone communicating with us, it won't drown us out. I don't know what just happened here. Well, we'll call that good enough. As long as those are loading, I'll get you back to our copy of Rule 4, which tonight we are going to go over. Jordan Peterson. This is the Napa Jordan Peterson podcast. I'm Ryan. This is Arthur. We are members of the Napa Jordan Peterson meetup. We meet up once a week, and we talk about Jordan Peterson's ideas, or at least use that as a starting point. And we kind of end up all over the place. And so Saturday nights we get together and try to take what we discussed to the larger world and hear what your guys' ideas, thoughts, and feedback are. So that's what we're here, that's what we're doing, and that's what we're talking about tonight. How are you doing, Arthur?
Pretty good. A little tired, but okay.
Hopefully we'll have less technical difficulty this week. It's always my fear now. But all signs point to green. Yeah. Definitely use more caffeine. I hear that.
Yeah.
So, rule 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not who someone else is today. So, it's really like comparison is the thief of joy.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. So, as you compare yourself to others, right, it can take away your joy. And that's one of the things that happens on social media right now a lot, right? You see everyone in the best day faking their vacations and so forth. And it looks like everyone's just living this one great life. And Peterson, in this chapter, talks about how our minds collapse down things to one dimension, one aspect of things, and compare ourselves singularly on that one aspect. And since that one person's doing one better than us in that aspect, we're so loss adverse that it really affects us. And we don't look at all the good things we have going for us. And, and I thought that was really interesting. Every time you go over with these rules, you always find something new.
Yeah, pretty much every sentence here is something we could talk about, I think.
Yeah, he's talking about small rural communities and how it's easier to climb the hierarchies there because they're smaller. However, in the hyper-connected world of the internet, we were so many more people to compare us to, so it's much different type of environment we're trying to get used to.
And no matter what you do, there's going to be many, many more that you can actually see who are also better than you at that, whatever.
And so the whole idea is, with this chapter, is not look at others, but try to look at yourself. And try to have aims so that you can make small improvements. So if you can look at yourself where you were yesterday, and you can convince yourself, hey, I can improve, even if it's the smallest little thing, make myself a little better than I was tomorrow, then, you can build up these small gains over time. And of course, you can have slips, but hopefully over a year or multiple years, it'll compound to great gains.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in that, just that idea of aiming small. I mean, I don't think you always have to aim small, but generally speaking, if you're at least aiming small and improving one small thing, like, if you have a room to clean up, you just move one paper or decide that you're going to spend 15 seconds on it. And I do that a lot, actually. It works a lot for me.
Yeah, I guess I was just kind of thinking baby steps because that helps get people started. Like if you can think of something to build momentum with. And even Peterson talks about with his clientele is like someone needs a job. And he's like, well, do you know where your resume is? Like, okay, maybe you might know where your resume is, but like, can you actually, maybe just look at it? You don't have to do it. Like these really small incremental steps where he'll negotiate with his clients to either, the most smallest things that doesn't sound like they're getting close at all, but you can break these tasks down with someone's help to little steps that even inch you towards that. And it's interesting, after you get a couple steps into there, it's really easy to take the bigger steps and get the momentum really moving and getting things done. So yeah, you don't always have to improve yourself by a little, and I'm sure there's probably something about like improve yourself as much as you can without causing great harm or disappointment.
Mm.
And actually, he talks about in this chapter too. He's like, sometimes we set our goals too high, sometimes we set our goals too low, sometimes we set our goals too chaotic. Where I guess I didn't quite fully understand what he meant by that.
I don't remember that.
We probably could search for it here. Let's do
Yeah,
that.
it is a trap if you always wait for the motivation before you take action, because actually sometimes it's the other way around, right? Action creates the motivation.
Mm-hmm. No chaos in here. Am I spelling it wrong? Yes, I'm spelling it wrong. There we go.
Okay.
But we can aim too high, too low, or too chaotically, so we fail to live in disappointment even when we appear to others to be living well. How can we benefit from our imaginativeness and our ability to improve the future without continually denigrating our current insufficient, successful, worthless lives? Arrogant? Is that? Let me see. We're missing a word here. Oh, there we go. Successful and worthless lives. Yeah, it doesn't really...
Oh yeah, and I guess he goes on. The first step perhaps is to take stock. Who are you? And I like the way he says, that we are really strangers to ourselves. We really don't know much about ourselves, and you have to kind of treat ourselves as if we're somebody else sometimes, right?
Yeah, he said we're the worst employee, but we're even worse boss to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're neither master nor slave.
Mm-hmm.
We're both at the same time.
And you can literally ask yourself, what do you want or what do you need, and then something answers, and it's strange. We're not just one thing.
Yeah, and he actually tied in this chapter, what our values are to pleasure. He said that what we find pleasure in can help us inform us of our values. Like, we don't know who we are till we explore it, and if we like it, that's something about ourselves. That's a feedback mechanism.
He mentions rewarding ourselves too. Like, if you promise yourself a little treat at the end of the day for having done whatever minimal improvement you've decided to do, and to take that seriously as if it's somebody else. Because if you don't follow through on that promise, there is that other you inside you that's going to remember that, and it's not going to. Paradoxically speaking, it's not going to trust you next time.
Yeah, and he also said when you hear those voices that make things on one dimension, that you have to recognize them as an inaccurate judge. And
I think it's worth reading. Do you remember?
I can search for judge. Okay, I thought judge would be a pretty popular. That's hard to find in value judgments.
What else did he say there? It's like what's wrong? What's wrong with something? What's wrong with it? Yeah.
Like there's no between something that's successful, meaning someone's really moving things forward and doing a lot, and they're just a success, versus a failure, which means nothing's worked out. You haven't done anything, and even failure almost in our culture sounds like we don't even apply that they tried, but there are many times where you try and you fail.
Yeah.
And that's I think being a failure is more important than not even playing the game.
Yeah.
Not even trying. So.
Yeah, it can teach you a lot. You can learn a lot from that.
And it's an interesting dynamic our society has, I think.
Yeah, I like the way he kind of shines a spotlight on the sort of the hypnotic effect that our own rationality has. It seems to make sense to us, and it's very convincing to us. But then you kind of look at it and say, not so much. Like the black and white here, he's critiquing He says we might start by considering the all too black and white words themselves, success or failure. So black and white thinking, and this is I think he mentions cognitive therapy because this is similar to that. There's like a list of cognitive distortions that are very common. Our thinking is just full of them. So, I mean, black or white thinking is one of them.
Oh, gotcha. Reducing things. Well, it's just easier to process the information, and it's almost dangerous to reduce something if you're not an expert in it. You can easily omit or miss the points of that thing. It's almost like you have to become an expert, and then you can be super precise and high resolution. But that's not a really good way to communicate, especially for people that aren't experts. So after you hit that level, you kind of learn how to edit and know what you were trying to communicate of this more complex aspect, and reduce it down so it's communicatable. And that's always an interesting dynamic in Peterson. He's always talking about low resolution versus high resolution. And I think they're both tools. It's just there's just so many examples of where low resolution's done wrong. And the only way to do high resolutions wrong is to, I guess, not be precise enough, or I guess be confusing, or just be wrong. It's hard to add a lot of detail and keep it accurate. And I think as long as you're trying to make an honest attempt, people can really tell. Another thing he said that I really picked up on in this chapter too was that maybe happiness is having hope in the most darkest parts, the most darkest time.
I don't remember any of this.
I know. I just pick up the audiobook and I listen to different sections as my mind comes in and out. Let me search for happiness. Maybe that's how deep the underworld is, where hope was conceived. Much of happiness is hope. No matter how deep the underworld in which that hope was conceived. So yeah, it's me reinterpreting that line. I'm pretty sure that was it, where he's talking about no matter how bad the world is, how deep you are in the underground, and as long as you can convince yourself of some hope, much of that is, or much happiness is that hope. So I thought that was really profound.
I guess that makes sense because that's the those are the words that are written over hell, right? The entrance to hell. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. So it's kind of, that makes sense too. Without hope, that is sort of hell in and of itself. But with hope, then it wouldn't be hell.
Yeah, I get various bouts of depression every now and then. The only thing that really I notice disappears is my hope. Like I feel like spinning my wheels, not getting any further. But as long as I can say, oh, this new project, I really believe in it, and it's gonna yield something. Hopefully I usually just learn more things when I'm doing wrong, but it's a journey. So as long as I keep learning and keep moving and have that energy and that hopefulness, I can keep going. And I think every failure, just like I said, makes me a better contender. The other thing here I like too was the past is fixed, but the future could be better. And so it really kind of talks about aims, and it talks about when you get in that like depressed or dark mode where it's like you can't see the future. The future is just going to be repeats of the past, and the past is so bad. Realizing that the difference between the future and the past is you have some control over the future. So no matter how bad your past is, if you can envision a bright future for yourself, that might be all the difference in the world about attitudes.
And that emphasis on what you could change and what you would change, those two things are pretty important too. Could and would, right? Deciding what your aim is going to be, or what small improvement you're going to make for the day, is something both that you could actually change and that you would change.
Yeah, so just because it's easy to do doesn't always mean you should do it, right? That's the how versus could.
Or you wouldn't necessarily. I mean, you might not want to, right?
Yeah, so you definitely want to make sure that your actions are tied to a goal. You can't just keep doing things chaotically and hoping they will lead you somewhere. They'll lead you all over the place, and sometimes they'll leave you further away from your goals if you're not careful. So that's why I think you always gotta try to think about goals in mind, or aims, and your aim should have meaning. Crazy brains, you gotta keep it all wired together.
Yeah. And there's that line again that he says, imagine that you are someone with whom you must negotiate.
Yes, and I think